Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Are You In? Now, as you can see, I haven't got my hair cut yet. Haven't had as much time as I wanted to do that, but hopefully I'll be able to do this tomorrow. Anyways, I am back tonight with an interesting album from one of my favorite bands, one that I haven't actually talked about a lot because I haven't had a lot of chance to, but that will be changing tonight. So I'm going to start the timer, and we're going to talk about this album. So, tonight I am talking about an album from Nine Inch Nails titled Bad Witch. Now, for those who don't know who Nine Inch Nails is, it's an industrial rock slash electronic rock slash ambient band from Cleveland, Ohio. They've had many lineups over the years, but the official lineup right now is Trent Reznor on lead guitar, lead vocals, guitar, bass, keyboards, synthesizers, piano, programming and percussion, and Atticus Ross on keyboards, synthesizers, programming, and backing vocals. Previous albums include Pretty Hate Machine in 1989, The Downward Spiral in 1994, The Fragile in 1999, With Teeth in 2005, Year Zero in 2007, Ghosts 1 through 4 in 2008, The Slip also in 2008, and Hesitation Marks in 2013. Now, this is an amazing band and one that I really like. I didn't really get into them until like the end of high school. A friend of mine told me about them, and I went through their whole entire discography and liked a lot of it. Even from Pretty Hate Machine to having a lot of cheesy stuff to Downward Spiral, The Fragile being amazing albums. With Teeth and Year Zero, I also really like them. I really like the edginess and just the interesting arrangements on those albums. I mean, Downward Spiral, fantastic album. One that has a lot of hype and reasonably does so. Just from the beginning to end, the depravity of this album and how it just slowly builds into this, this psychotic, this very ambient, very psychotic, very interesting ending album. Just an incredible album. I'll probably talk about this band eventually on a diving through discography, but I like a lot of their stuff. When we get to Ghosts and The Slip, they aren't as memorable to me. Especially Ghosts, there was a lot of instrumental songs that are very quick, and to me, didn't really like it that much. Though I really enjoyed Hesitation Marks when they came back in 2013. That marked a really, really good year for Trent Reznor with that album, as well as helping out on Like Clockwork, one of my favorite albums from Queens of the Stone Age, and being a part of a band called How to Destroy Angels with his wife, as well as Atticus Ross and a couple other people on their debut album and only album, Welcome Oblivion. I think maybe one of the top 3 albums of that year for me, and an amazing album. I love it. I love their style. I love the building of a lot of their music. It's sad that they haven't done anything else, because I would love to see more from this band. So over the years after Hesitation Marks, Trent Reznor had dropped a couple of EPs. Not the Actual Events, I would believe, came out in 2016 in December, and then Add Violence came out in 2017. Not bad, but not memorable to me. And then, I heard that that he was putting out an LP. A surprise to me that this was happening, and a surprise that it was only 6 songs, only 30 minutes. Wondering why it's an LP, an LP, not an EP. But apparently, it was the third in a trilogy with that not the Actual Events and Add Violence. So, after listening to it a couple different times, how do I feel about it? So, this is an interesting album. Like I said, because there's only 6 songs, it's only 30 minutes, and 2 of the songs are instrumentals. It's a very interesting album that I've had different takes as I've listened to it. The first time, I thought it was not good. I thought it was... I didn't like some of the stuff on there, and we'll definitely go on with that with the cons. Then I listened to it again, with more of a stereo sound so that I could hear everything, and I thought a lot of the arrangements were really interesting. listen to again, kind of in the middle there. So I like the energy on a lot of the songs. Shit Mirror kind of brings me back to stuff off of Year Zero or stuff off of The Slip. Even a little bit of With Teeth, where it's a little bit more aggressive and interesting, but not like it is a little bit depraved. But it's just like the energy on there, like the churning guitar, the industrial drums. It just the interesting nature of all of it, and having these vigorous verses, but very understated choruses. Especially one part where you get to having a stop in the sound at the end of the second verse, and then bring back in this hushed chorus as Trent Reznor keeps building and building and building, and it you know, if you know Nine Inch Nails, you know that they're very good at building songs and adding interesting, simplistic parts. So, I mean, the same thing happens on this song. You have this other electronic part come in on the second verse that's very interesting to listen to. And, you know, the building of each part at the end is very interesting, especially with a guitar line at the end that changes the key. It's an interesting song, and it seems to be the lyrics themselves is talking about, you know, an evil side coming out and feeling at home in this day and time that we are in right now, especially with our presidency. Very interesting song, a very frantic way of opening up the album. Ahead of Ourselves it is kind of that same sinister sound with a pulsating industrial sound, especially the drums. It's the drums are so complex and hard hitting. There's a lot of electrical tinges and scratches, and a lot of these interesting, you know, dissonant and creepy sounds. Even Reznor's voice is very electronically tinged, for making for an interesting sound too. There's it's just a very interesting song at the beginning with it being a little bit more subdued, and then it keeps building in the pre-chorus. In the first pre-chorus, it's the melody is very eerie and very just like all over the place, and then builds into this more distorted chorus where Reznor is screaming a little bit more, and it makes for an interesting part. It's in 10/4, and all of it is very, very interesting, very eerie, talking about the antiquity of the human race now that we're building AI that are going to outperform us, and you can hear that kind of in the tinge of his voice, because it's electronically tinged. It's kind of sounding like a robot talking about the antiquity of the human race. Yeah, I've played a goddamn part, which is just interesting on its own. This is the first album that I can remember where Trent Reznor plays saxophone, and on a majority of the songs. This is the one that shines the most, because it has building of parts, and then each part eventually, like, a couple of different saxophone parts come in with different timings and different harmonies, and like there's this eerie, like, kind of like bassy piano part where it sounds like they're like strumming like the piano wires themselves. There's some interesting chords, there's some interesting electronic parts, and then eventually it just drops out, and it's all of the saxophone parts that Trent Reznor is playing. Very interesting, very nicely built, and, you know, nice arc of building parts and then relieving parts. I really like that. I'm a huge fan of those type of ideas. You got a song like I'm Not From This World, the other instrumental song, which is not as much in terms of the instrumentation, but it's hugely atmospheric, haunting, feels like, yes, it feels like an alien invasion, like a slow descent into an alien invasion. And what I love is that even though it doesn't have a lot of instrumentation, it makes up for more of it in the dynamic build and contrast and the wave of everything. It's a very interesting song, and like it's almost 7 minutes long, and yet it doesn't necessarily feel like it's 7 minutes. So you got some interesting ideas. I would say the Over and Out and God Break Down the Door are some of the weaker songs, and I would say it's because of some of the instrumentation. God Break Down the Door to me is the worst song on the album. It kind of doesn't. All the parts don't really work together. It's kind of like something off of David Bowie's Black Star, but doesn't really feel like everything meshes up. You got some very interesting and very hard-hitting drums. You have some interesting electronic parts. You have some nice horn parts, but none of them really mash up to me. And what sets it over the top for me is the crooning that Reznor does on this song. It's something that you've never really heard on any of the other albums, and it doesn't really work in this song, where he just keeps crooning "God Break Down the Door." You're searching for answers, but you can't find them here, and it just doesn't. It feels all weird, and I understand that might be what they were looking for, where everything seems just a slightly off, but it doesn't work for me. There is a nice little interlude where it's a little bit slower, and it gives Reznor time with the lyrics, and that part of the crooning sounds a little bit good. But then everything, when it comes back in, it just doesn't really work for me. Over and Out does a little bit better. It's a nice building song. It has a cool bass part with a marimba melody for most of the song, and the drums are very interesting. But they also kind of remind me of parts of How to Destroy Angels, some of the songs off of Welcome Oblivion. But there's the saxes come back. There's a nice little interesting idea where the song kind of states it's in some sort of D key, but it doesn't know if it's major or minor until the lyrics come in and the melody comes in, and you find out it's in D minor. And Reznor brings back the vibrato feel, the crooning feel, but it works better on this song. I think everything gels a little bit better, and it builds very nicely. Even the atmospheric ending, even if it's over a minute, all of it sounds really interesting. The lyrics are talking about this deja vu feeling of everything falling apart. And it's not a bad CD. Out of this trilogy, if you will, I think it's the best one, the most interesting one. There's a lot of really interesting concepts, even though it does sometimes feel like it's borrowing from other places. Whether it's, I'm not from this world, where it's building kind of like something off of the Downward Spiral. Over and Out having parts feeling like stuff from Welcome to Oblivion. God Break Down the Door, I would say, is the most experimental and most different sound, even if it does sound like something from Black Star rather than some of 9 Inch Nails' discography. Play the Goddamn Part, I would probably say, kind of reminds me of a song from Ghosts, but a little bit, it adds a little bit more because of that, the saxophones. Ahead of Ourselves kind of reminds me of, and Ship Mirror kind of reminded me of the later works like The Slip in Year Zero and With Teeth. It reminds me of that type of stuff. But, it's not a bad album. I would probably say it's one of their maybe weaker, one of the lesser ones, only because it's 30 minutes long, and some of the missteps. And to me, they're missteps. They're not bad songs. They're just missteps. God Break Down the Door, not an interesting enough song for me. Too weird. The everything else though fits pretty well, and are interesting. But if I was to go with a CD for 9 Inch Nails, I would pick a lot more before this album. Will this be in my top 50? Maybe. It's not bad. It's very interesting. I would definitely listen to it again. I do like the bite-sized nature of it. I still wonder why this is in an LP and not an EP, but it works well. If you are interested in 9 Inch Nails, this isn't going to disappoint. This is a little bit different though. It's a little bit more industrial, but it has like a lot of meshings of all of a lot of their albums, and it's just bite-sized ideas of a lot of their albums. So I would say, if you're a Nine Inch Nails fan, take a listen to this. If you've never listened to Nine Inch Nails and want to get into Nine Inch Nails, give this one a try, and then know that it like takes from a lot of the other albums. So from there, you know, listen to Downward Spiral, listen to Fragile, listen to With Teeth, Year Zero. Any of these albums I think are a little bit better, but this is a nice gateway into everything. So that is my time. Had 10 seconds to spare. Thank you so much for watching. Of course, if you like this, of course, like the video, comment on what you think of this album, or even tell me what your favorite Nine Inch Nails album is. Share this with your friends, subscribe to my channel, and just keep on watching my videos. Now tomorrow I will be dropping the part 3 of Digging Through Discographies with Linkin Park, and we'll be talking about Minutes to Midnight. See where things changed a little bit, and you know how much different this is from Meteor and Hybrid Theory. I'll link you to the Bad Witch album, as well as personally some of my favorite stuff. I want to also, you know, I think I would like to put on Welcome Oblivion, because out of like the recent stuff, even though it's not a Nine Inch Nails album, it's an amazing album. I've talked about it years ago when I did my top 50 albums of 2013, and I think it's one that is not necessarily listened to enough. So I'll also link to that. And yeah, that's my time. Thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow for another video. Peace.